I just went to the Oval Office and found this beautiful letter from President Obama. It was really very nice of him to do that, and we will cherish that. We will keep that, and we won't even tell the press what's in that letter.
But Trump's support for this clearly terrible idea seemed to develop over the week. He actually focus grouped it on Wednesday during a listening session featuring survivors of the shooting. A session, incidentally, for which his own notes included a reminder to say, "I hear you," which is what you might write down if you were a robot pretending to be a person, pretending to be a robot, pretending to be a person. And not surprisingly, arming some teachers did not go down too well in that room. Watch what happened when he asked for a show of hands.
Does anybody like that idea here? Does anybody like it? Right? Yes? The meadow, your beautiful meadow. We talked about that. And do people feel strongly against it? Anybody? Anybody? Strongly against it? All right. I mean, look, we can understand both sides.
That is Donald Trump in a nutshell, proposing a terrible idea in a tone-deaf way, then refusing to acknowledge he just lost the popular vote. Instead of getting the White House rabbit hole yet again this week, let's instead focus on Russia, where the movie The Revenant was marketed as Lucky Man Has Fun Time. Now, Russia has been the centre of allegations regarding former double agent Sergei Skripal, who, along with his daughter, was found poisoned on a park bench in Britain 2 weeks ago. And by this week, it seemed there was a consensus on who was responsible.
The United States joined European leaders today in blaming Russia for poisoning a former spy, Sergei Skripal. In a joint statement, the U.S., Britain, France, and Germany all said that there is, quote, no plausible alternative explanation for the nerve agent attack.
Basically, every country agrees that Russia did this, which is incredible. We can't even get the world to agree on a single shape for electrical outlets. What the fuck is that one, by the way? It looks like I'm plugging my laptop into the killer from Scream. Yeah, it's true. A Trump aides joked that John McCain's opposition to Trump's pick for CIA director didn't matter because he's dying anyway. And that is shocking, but it's also not really surprising. These days, Trump aide says something awful isn't really news, it's just an assumed fact. Like gravity, or the fact that young Sheldon will someday grow up and look nothing like Jim Parsons, and then all hell will break loose because the world can't handle an inconsistency like that. But tonight, let's ignore all of that and instead focus on the busy week for one person in particular, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal lawyer, and a lawyer so shitty, he made Trump say, I need someone good, get me Rudy Giuliani on the phone. Think about that. Think about that. But let's put all that aside and instead focus on a lesser-known member of the Trump circus, Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of the Interior, a man doing a job that Trump definitely fully understands.
I have to really talk about a very special guy that I made Secretary of the Interior. Does he know the Interior? He knows it. He loves it. He loves seeing it and writing on it.
What the fuck are you talking about? You sound less like a president trying to introduce a member of his cabinet and more like a guy at a yard sale trying to sell a couch that he definitely fucked. Oh, do I know this couch? I love this couch. I love seeing it and riding on it. And you know what? I just decided she's not for sale. Leave us alone. Get out of here. Give us some privacy. To the fact that that man was born in 1969, a year after the Andy Griffith Show went off the air, which I guess means that he may never have actually seen it, because not only did Sheriff Andy Taylor not carry a gun, he was happy to explain why.
When a man carries a gun all the time, the respect he thinks he's getting might really be fear. So I don't carry a gun because I don't want the people of Mayberry to fear a gun. I'd rather they would respect me.
Yeah. The sheriff has got a point. And the people of Mayberry did respect him, despite the fact, and this is true, he ate Tide Pods all the time. Now, meanwhile, the Trump administration had another chaotic week, from Mueller's Russia indictments to continuing questions surrounding Rob Porter and who knew what when about his alleged domestic violence, to Trump's newly reported affair with a former Playboy model, a different sordid affair from that other sordid affair that you might be thinking of.
This thing is probably dead on arrival.
Conservatives hate their bill. I promise you. Obamacare Light
dead on arrival.
It seems dead on arrival.
It's dead on arrival.
They're calling it a stinking pile of garbage. They're calling it dead on, they're calling it dead on arrival.
Yes, much like the life behind Melania Trump's eyes, the AHCA looked dead by the time it was introduced in Washington. And there is no doubt the bill got enemies quickly. The American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, the American Nurses Association, and the AARP all immediately came out against it. And even people you would presume would be happy about the repeal were not exactly thrilled. And they both have official roles now. Ivanka has recently taken an unpaid position as assistant to the president. And as for Jared, well, he seems to have a hand in basically everything.
He's been planning this week's visit of the Chinese president to Mar-a-Lago, and he's also tasked with brokering peace in the Middle East. The president tapping his son-in-law to reform the criminal justice system, not to mention he's running the new Office of American Innovation, where he's responsible for reforming veteran care, tackling the opioid epidemic, and overseeing the not-so-small feat of revamping the entire federal government.
Holy shit! It is not unusual for powerful men to give their son-in-laws do-nothing jobs. But leave it to Donald Trump, who can't even get nepotism right, to give his a do-everything job. And this week may have actually been notable, not just for the terrible things Trump tried to do, but for how terribly he tried to do them. Take what happened on Wednesday morning.
A policy pronouncement from the President of the United States. He just took a major stance saying that he will ban transgender people from serving in the U.S. military.
Look, that is as hateful as it is pointless. But it means that we may already be entering the Mad Libs portion of Trump's presidency, where he just persecutes groups at random. Transgender people banned from the military. Pacific Islanders can no longer use the postal service. And Jews can no longer high-five. Sorry, Jews. And things got even worse because Pruitt also took flack this week for the fact that when he first moved to DC, he paid just $50 a night to stay in a condo linked to a prominent energy lobbyist, which, for the whole Drain the Swamp administration, is particularly hard to take. And his pushback was frankly pathetic.
That is something that, again, has been reviewed by ethics officials here. They've said that it's market rate.
You're renting it from the wife of a lobbyist.
You could go on Craigslist today, and it's been done in the last week.
But a cabinet secretary is going to go on
Craigslist today shows rentals for one bedroom of less than $1,000 so, on Capitol Hill near.
I've never heard of an apartment like that. I've lived in Washington over 25 years.
Well,
now, I know that $50 a night sounds ridiculous, but the boycott train hit a bit of a snag when it ran into one of the NRA's lesser-known side ventures.
One group that hasn't been swayed yet, big tech companies like Apple, Amazon, and Roku. You see, these companies' streaming services still offer access to NRA TV, the gun lobby group's free online channel focused on pro-gun content.
Okay, so that is an uncomfortable situation for Apple and Amazon, but it's a fucking miracle for Roku. Harry, get in here! Someone just called us a big tech company! They said, like Amazon and Apple, it's happening, Harry! It's happening! But, now, Cohen dominated the news for days, particularly when it emerged that Donald Trump was not the only political figure for whom he'd arranged hush money.
Top Republican fundraiser Elliot Broidy says Cohen negotiated a settlement, reportedly worth $1.6 million, with a former Playboy playmate who claims she became pregnant as a result of a consensual affair. Today, Broidy resigned his post.
Yes, the deputy finance chair of the RNC cheated on his wife with a former Playboy model and paid her off and has now resigned, presumably, so he can start his new job as a big old bullfrog who sits on a lily pad all the do-da day. But the tricky thing is, if you're going to have something that even looks like an election, you badly need at least the appearance of an opponent. And he did get one of those, kind of.
The only man to stand against President Sisi is Musa Mustafa Musa, an openly pro-Sisi politician who, until the day before he registered to run, was part of the campaign to get Sisi re-elected.
It's true. One of his own supporters jumped into the race at the last minute, submitting his candidacy just 15 minutes before the deadline. And until the morning of his nomination, Musa's own Facebook page said, "Long live Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for president." And look, hey, maybe that was just a glitch on Egyptian Facebook. You know, like the one on America's Facebook, where they allowed your personal data to be accessed by a firm working to elect Donald Trump president of the United States. But look, Farmville was super fun, wasn't it? So it was all worth it at the end of the day. No, there might be some younger people watching this saying, well, hold on, who cares? We're the first generation to routinely send pictures of our junk to each other over the internet. Why should we give a shit about someone seeing our social security numbers? But you should know, criminals can do a lot more with that number than they can with a picture of your dick.
This information is going to be sold left and right on the black market. People are going to be able to open up credit cards for the rest of your life once they have that information.
They can go out and purchase a home in your name. They can open bank accounts, take car loans.
Someone who has your social security number could actually take a job, they could file taxes, and even claim your kids as dependents and be gone with your refund before you ever actually file a tax return.
No, the tax benefit is the whole point of having children. Without that, all you're left with is your actual children, which, you know, ugh. And that's the thing here. It's not that all forensic science is bad, because it's not. But too often, its reliability is dangerously overstated. And one sign of that is that forensic experts in court are often nudged to use one very convincing phrase.
To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Within a reasonable scientific certainty.
To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Are you able to say that within a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes. And here's the thing, that phrase does have a persuasive ring to it. Unfortunately, as that presidential counsel pointed out, it has no generally accepted meaning in science. It's one of those terms like basic or trill that has no commonly understood definition. Am I trill? Is that good or bad? I mean, I do feel trill, so I'm guessing it's awful.
Microscopic amounts of plutonium, if ingested, are deadly.
One of the characteristics of it is it has an extremely long half-life. Plutonium-239, for example, has a half-life of about 24,000 years.
It's true, 24,000 years, and that just scratches the surface. It takes 10 half-lives for plutonium to become harmless. So that's 240,000 years, a unit of time more commonly known as one English patient. And as any adult with an American Girl doll collection eventually finds out, if you want to keep something around for a disturbingly long time, you have got to find an appropriate place to put it. I cannot live with your murder dolls anymore. Felicity stares at me while I sleep. She stares at me. She stares unblinking. And look, the election comes at a time of great volatility. France has suffered a string of major terror attacks, their unemployment rate is hovering around 10%, and their current president, Francois Hollande, isn't even running for a pretty good reason.
The latest opinion polls have come out. Francois Hollande is at an all-time low. I mean, he even got close to zero here, didn't he?
Get ready for it. According to this poll, only 4% of French people are satisfied by Francois Hollande's presidency. 4%.
4%? To put that in perspective, apparently the very lowest album score in Metacritic's history is 15% for Kevin Federline's Playing with Fire. An album about which Billboard raved, in general, Federline enunciates well. Now, the Chinese government, however, have a very different view, because instead of vaguely loving the Dalai Lama, they very specifically hate him. They've referred to him as a wolf in monk's robes and have banned his image. They've even retaliated against Americans for even meeting with him.
Britain's Guardian says China reportedly banned Lady Gaga. That's because she met with the Dalai Lama in Indianapolis to discuss yoga.
Wow. I mean, not only is it incredible that they banned her for that, it's incredible that that event happened at all. Lady Gaga was with the Dalai Lama in Indianapolis discussing yoga. That is only slightly less ridiculous than Elton John meeting Ben Bernanke on Easter Island to talk about Roombas. Now, but the legality of marijuana is actually much more fraught than you may think. In fact, if you have marijuana right now, even if you are acting completely legally according to your state, you may still be in serious jeopardy. And that's not your weed-induced paranoia talking. You could lose your home, job, or possessions, Greg. And yeah, I know I'm freaking the shit out of any stoned viewer named Greg right now. But that is not a bad thing, because this story is genuinely worth worrying about. And let's begin with going back to why marijuana is so heavily regulated in the first place. It was legal at the start of the 20th century, but anti-drug hysteria, fueled partly by racist stereotypes about who was using it, led to it being gradually outlawed around the country. And this story, the story of dialysis, is an amazing case study of good intentions being thwarted by bad incentives, poor oversight and profiteering. And one of the key characters in this story is, incredibly, this guy.
Just take those old records off the shelf. I said listen to them by myself. Today's music ain't got the same soul. I like that old time rock and roll.
Now, if you are understandably thinking, who is that man doing barefoot gymnastics to Bob Seger while dressed like the third saddest waiter at a medieval times? Well, no, actually, not really. She is fine, but she's not getting on the court.
Donald Trump will fill that seat, and maybe more. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in her 80s. Anthony Kennedy is over 80, and there are other justices who've bandied about the idea of retiring. Bottom line, Donald Trump is going to shape the Supreme Court for decades to come.
Wow. That is one of those phrases you just assumed you would never have to hear. Like Vanilla Ice is picking up his Nobel Prize in physics. Or Henry Kissinger just came out with a line of skinny jeans. They go with everything. It is worth properly understanding what North Korea is currently capable of, because while their missiles may be able to reach us, and they do have nuclear warheads, most experts believe that they don't yet have the technology to reliably hit the US mainland. So that is reassuring. Although, on the other hand, a recent Pentagon assessment did suggest that they could cross that threshold next year. So if a job interviewer asks you, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, it is now perfectly acceptable just to scream in terror into their face. Which means here we are again, after another mass shooting with weak legislation doomed to failure. And there is clearly a disconnect between public opinion, which favours to varying degrees a number of different gun control measures, and any practical action in Washington. And it is pretty clear what is standing between those two things. And it's the National Rifle Association. Like Peter, but for guns and effective. And
did you know Don Blankenship's trial was not about the mine explosion?
Really? You sure?
Oh, yeah. The Obama judge wouldn't even let Don mention the explosion, and the Obama prosecutors knew Don had nothing to do with the explosion.
West Virginians knew that Obama was against them and Cole. Now they understand what happened when Don fought back.
I'm voting for Don.
Now that I know the whole truth, me too.
Cool. Now, of all the insane things in that ad, from that man clearly drinking from an empty coffee mug to the term Obama judge, perhaps the weirdest is that all those two people seem to need to know in order to vote for Blankenship is that he didn't blow up a mine. That's it. They may as well have said, is Don Blankenship the Golden State Killer? No, they caught that guy. Well, that's all I need to know. I'm voting for Don. Cheers. So for now, let's move on to North Korea, a country led by a man who is both a brutal dictator and also the only person who's ever been excited to get a picture taken with Mike Pompeo. Now, the proposed summit between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un is scheduled to take place on June 12th, but this week it hit a major snag.
North Korea now says it may call off Kim Jong-un's meeting with President Trump over U.S. demands to denuclearize the Korean peninsula.
Yes, the summit is now in jeopardy for a number of reasons, from the fact that both sides apparently have different definitions of what denuclearization means, to North Korea's objections to the US and South Korea holding a joint training exercise called Max Thunder, which incidentally sounds way too much like a porn name for a military exercise. It's as if the Bin Laden raid had been called Operation Dick Thickhog Bin Laden Goes Down.
Bocce family take their first tentative steps into the United States of America. Within seconds, the Border Patrol are on them. There's no chase, no tension. They expected to be caught. As we film, another two figures emerge, a mother and her daughter. They're given blankets to protect them from the cold.
And that's kind of not what people expect when they think of the border. In the Venn diagram of hardened drug dealers and people who need blankets, that middle section is pretty much just Linus. Oh, I'm sorry, he is not a drug dealer? The messy hair, the stripy shirt, the thumb-sucking? He sells ecstasy at raves. And he's high on his own supply all the time. There is no great pumpkin. He's a junkie. Someone intervene. Now, the only problem with that is that we consulted some linguistics experts, and it turns out, and this is true, there's already a word for women's heroes, and it's the word heroes. It's a little like the word sheroes, only it's not stupid, and it is a word. Now, Mattel fared a little better with their new line of inspiring women Barbie dolls, which is a nice idea. The problem there was that one local newscaster somehow found a way to make it creepy.
The three inspiring women dolls are aviator Amelia Earhart, artist Frida Kahlo, and mathematician Katherine Johnson. I love the Frida Kahlo one. She's dressed up.
Salma Hayek, right? The movie?
Oh, yeah, there you go. So you like that movie, yeah?
I like Selma.
Oh, you like Selma
I
Hayek.
like Selma.
Okay.
It was a segment about women's empowerment, children's toys, and a long-dead artist, but he decided, I can perv out on this, I will perv out on this. With God as my witness, I will make this Women's Day segment about my dick. But incredibly, being negged by WGBH Boston was not the weirdest bit of attention that segment attracted. That, without a doubt, would be this.
All right, it's comedian John Oliver in New York. They did a big piece on net neutrality and the FCC, and he directed everybody to go to the FCC website and leave, like, hateful comments. And it turns out it totally worked! The FCC's website crashed! You did it, John!
I didn't do anything.
What?
People did it. Yeah. I just merely pointed out a problem. Now, yeah, I will admit that is a quintessentially British excuse. You cannot possibly hold me responsible for what the masses decide to make a fuss about. Now run along, scallywag. I said good day to you. Good day, sir! And yet, all week long, Republicans have been dealing with an unexpected problem. Constituents at town halls furious that Obamacare might be taken away.
I could tell you 3 members of my family, including me, that would be dead, and homeless if it was not for ACA.
Yes, apparently that annoying Obamacare goat in the house turned out to be a licensed physician who's been saving lives. And a lot of people do not want her to go anywhere. And yes, I said her. Oh, I'm sorry. You assumed that goat doctor was a man? What the fuck is wrong with you? Hashtag lady goats can be doctors. Hashtag feminism. And look, now, Colbert actually wanted Martin Van Buren, but unbeknownst to him, and this is true, Jon Stewart bought that one. Presumably, to add to his ever-expanding mannequin sex dungeon, that's the only rational explanation. I know what you're thinking. Spending good money on a poorly made wax figure of a former president sounds pretty stupid, right? Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that is why I am proud to say we didn't go down there and buy one of them. We bought 5 of them. 5. Why 5? Because we are 5 times stupider than any other TV show. That's fucking why. And while Theresa May did manage to win re-election in her own constituency, even that came with some humiliation. And let me explain. British politics has a proud tradition of having all candidates standing together on the stage when the results are announced, even joke candidates, which means that on election night, as her party was dealt a massive blow, the Prime Minister here had to stand on stage alongside Elmo, who got 3 votes, as well as Howling Lord Hope of the Monster Raving Loony Party, who got 119 votes. And if you've noticed this guy, wait till you hear his name. And while this budget is very unlikely to pass in its current form, it is worth taking just a few minutes to look at it. Partly because it gives us a clear sense of our president's priorities, but also because it gives us a chance to get to know yet another one of the Trump administration's key characters. Because we've met most of them by now. There's Steve Bannon, a wealthy former Goldman Sachs banker who somehow constantly looks like he just woke up on a park bench after losing custody of his children. There is Kellyanne Conway, the brave survivor of a terrorist attack she completely made up. And there's Stephen Miller, the least popular boy at vampire school. Well, the point is, all this merger activity has helped make some sectors of our economy ridiculously consolidated.
The United States has gone from having 10 large airlines back in 2000 to just 4 today. And those 4 mega airlines now dominate more than 80% of the U.S. market.
Yeah, we're down to just 4 major airline choices. And no, that does not include JetBlue, because that is not actually an airline. It's just a very expensive way to eat those weird blue chips, which are, and this is true, just sliced Grover arms. So, look, it is no wonder that Jones has been getting a lot of coverage recently. We even mentioned him on our first show of the season back in February, and in his response to it, he seemed a little annoyed with me.
Your ratings are in the toilet, you're a joke. They brought you back revamped.
out of the gates to attack yours truly after you lectured us that Donald Trump could never win over and over again because, you know, you're the intellectual. Everybody knows the British accent's intellectual, even though there's no facts behind it. And now you make fun of me out of context and I'll go, look at this loon. Hey, boy, people want legitimacy. They want real. They want to hear somebody that can speak to them and touch them inside.
Okay. A few things there. One, don't call me boy. And two, my British accent does not sound intellectual. Believe me, I sound like a chimney sweep passing through a wood chipper. But...